Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here today. We have a couple of folks on the line. I know, Steve, are you still there? Steve Meyer?
Hopefully.
I'm here.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So, who isn't here, I guess?
Would you like to list? Patrick and Martin, Chad Ryan, Dr. Nave, and Donna DiBiase.
So everyone else is present and accounted for. Okay, good. All right. Well,
Andrew Maxwell, sorry. Andrew.
Okay. No, hopefully they'll come along. My job is just to begin by welcoming you, which I have done. And I'd like to turn it over to the Mark twins. Will tell us what they've done the last couple of years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you guys are up to bat.
All right, this is just a brief kind of overview of what goes into the town, kind of how it started. It's pretty concise, so you know, if there's questions in between it, feel free to interrupt me. Every New Yorker lives in a city or a town. Some towns have one or more villages, like Mark's town, having 3 villages within the town. In New York State, 932 towns exist. Population of Onondaga County, just over 466,000, where 19 towns are located, of which 59% of county residents live in towns. Towns are created by the legislature or by division of one or more existing towns by the county legislative body at some point in time. According to New York State, Town Law Section 2 defines a town as a municipal corporation comprising inhabitants within its boundaries and formed for the purpose of exercising such powers and discharging such duties of local government and administration of public affairs as have been or may be conferred or imposed upon it by law. That's a really fancy statement. Population of all towns in New York State range from 50 to 750,000. In Onondaga County, Clay being the biggest town, just over 58,000. Salina, the second largest, 33,000. And then the smallest town, or the smallest population, is Spafford, with just about 1,700. There are 2 classifications of towns within the state. There's a first and second class town that's based on population. A first class town is over 10,000 residents. A second class town is under that, of which a first class town can become a suburban town if they are over 25,000 residents or at least 7,500 and within 15 miles of a city which has at least 100,000 residents. Within there are various different or more powers that the town may have, but those lines have skewed a bit. I think either legislation was passed or might be passing to give towns of all classes more home rule opportunities to create local laws. Town officers, where there's a supervisor who is elected and leads the town. 4 to 6 council members who are also elected. That depends on, you know, many towns have 4, some do have more than that. It just depends on how they want to make it up. Town clerk is either elected or appointed. Salina is the only town where there is an appointed clerk. And if you've been paying attention to the news this week, DeWitt is putting a vote in front of a referendum in front to make their clerk appointed and not elected. And it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I think it's going to be contentious and may not be successful because of just the climate that surrounds that. Highway superintendents are also either elected or appointed. Salina and Clay are the only 2 towns that have appointed highway supervisors. All the rest are elected. Receiver of taxes also elected, which most towns have, but now there is a trend that a few towns have merged that with the town clerk's position and eliminated the receiver of taxes. I think you'll see that probably occurring a lot more as some of those elected receivers retire or move on, and that's where a lot of those opportunities are bound to do that. The assessor who is appointed, who determines the property values in each town, they're appointed for 6 years. Each town having 2 town justices who are also elected, and all of these terms of the elected officers range from anywhere from 2 to 4 years, depending on the town. They're pretty much all on the board. There are also a zoning board of appeals, a planning board, and a board of assessment review, which are all of those are appointed by the town board to various term lengths, some of which are paid in some towns, some of which are all volunteer in others. Town board exercises both legislative and executive functions, and the supervisor position is actually more administrative than executive. As supervisor, I am one of 5 votes. All the power weighs within the body of the board. The main function of the supervisor is basically to be the chief fiscal officer, oversee the town board meetings, and operate town hall. Very limited executive powers, as that all comes from the board as a whole. Services provided by the towns, and I probably didn't catch them all, but basically, public safety, some have police forces, and some fire, utilities, water, street lights, all that type of stuff. Garbage pickup, certainly a large one, and that could include yard waste as well. Some by contract, some by the highway departments. Snow plowing, obviously, that's a huge item around here, which we're growing accustomed to. And, if we didn't have to plow snow, our budget would be millions of dollars less. And that's just an expensive proposition that we don't have any choice. We got to do it. Recreation, which is all of the parks and pools and the gazebos and all of that that people have come accustomed to take their families and that. Zoning and planning, which is basically a very large function of a town. If a business comes in, they need to go through the process of the zoning or planning boards or both to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and it fits what the town wants them to do. Code enforcement. One of the largest things is property maintenance, make sure people are keeping up their properties. Also, the fire marshal will fall under that, and making sure that all businesses are up to fire code and items like that. Other items, things you might even think about, marriage licenses. Most, or I think every town, the villages as well, can provide a marriage license, or you can go there and if you're getting married within New York State, get your marriage license from there, as well as the handicap tags, which is, especially in Salina, where we have a growing senior population. We have people coming in and out, making sure they get those, as well as passports, which you may not even know. You can go to your town, or not all towns, but most towns, you get a passport, as well as some hunting and fishing licenses, dog licenses, certainly, and crossing guards. We have to provide crossing guards for the school districts. They don't provide them, so, and that's becoming a difficult process because of the background checks and making sure that they are appropriate to be around schools, and we don't really necessarily have the mechanisms to do that so easily anymore. So the police department doesn't necessarily, if you have your own police department, they probably be able to do it, but we have to rely on others, and it's becoming a little more costly. Animal control, mainly it's your dog warden, but there are some towns, unfortunately, Salina, that has to worry about cats, feral cats. And a lot of towns provide trappers, not under necessarily animal control, but a private contractor that will go out and trap nuisance animals such as skunks, woodchucks, things like that, which in most cases the whole cost is borne by the town. In some cases the property owner would have to pay a portion of that, but certainly the town is paying most of the shot of that. Road maintenance, obviously that's a large issue with infrastructure going on, making sure the roads are safe, and sign maintenance is actually a huge item as well. All of the street signs that were in the municipality, I think it's, I don't know if it's 2015 or maybe they extended that, but all of them have to be switched out to the new state highway standards, which are to make them reflective, or some new safety thing they're doing with the sign. So we have gone through, and I think we did now, all street signs and all the stop signs all have to be replaced. We had a significant amount of time to do it, but still.
Who decided that?
There's a
The state?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, things you don't think of that we have to do. You know, a lot of towns at senior programs as well, at senior centers, you know, provide space for seniors to meet, provide them with a budget so that they can, you know, have transportation, go on trips and be active. You know, certainly in Salina, there's probably 4 or 5 senior groups that are dispersed throughout the town. I'm sure it's similar to that in most other towns. Tree trimming and removal. You know, if the highway department necessarily do it, you know, the contractor that goes out and, you know, if there's a tree in the right of way that is dying, or, you know, people think it's a safety issue, we're the ones that have to, you know, take care of that. We do that.
On private property?
No, not, well, it's just in the right of way. That tree is
property.
near the edge of the road.
Right, okay.
That type of thing. No, we don't, definitely,
Yeah.
that's the first question, where is the tree?
Right.
Well, when they say, well, it's in my backyard, I say, thanks, but you can't do that.
No,
Yeah. And, you know, picking up all of that
Right.
type of items as well, especially since we had that little storm a couple weeks ago. We don't, certainly Salina doesn't normally go out. We have a contractor that picks up yard waste, but because there is some excessive amounts of branches, we did go out for a week and, you know, make sure we got the grinder out there and we picked up stuff. Those are just extra things that we do just because we should be doing it and it helps the residents. Tax collection is another thing. Obviously, we're collecting property taxes. We're also collecting school taxes, and we're also collecting the funds for the various fire districts as well. So we are basically a pass-through at this point. Years back when interest rates were at a reasonable level, you know, if the money is sitting in our account for a month, we at least make something off of it before it passes on. Now it's basically just a pass-through, but people are used to paying their taxes. You know, in the town, it's convenience. You know, they don't want to drive out to the school office. It just works out. It's all, you know, convenience. It's personal. So basically, you know, town government is personal. I mean, it's neighbors representing neighbors. You know, you talk to people at the grocery store. They're comfortable. You know, your town hall is easy to get to, where you can get your services, even services that don't necessarily the town don't provide, but they use you as a resource to try and find those services. This is my tax bill. I thought it was important just to show, which is based on a modest home assessed at $85,000, just to see what the value that you're getting some of those services are. At least, you know, where I live in Lincourt in the town of Salina. For instance, under the Salina Consolidated Refuse, which is our garbage district, it's a unit charge of $153, which gets you garbage pickup every week as well as yard waste. And basically, you can put almost anything out there. You can put a large item out one a week, which is, you know, a refrigerator, couch, washer, dryer, those types of things. Under highway tax, you'll see that based on my assessment, $245 you're paying for the highway department, which in plowing alone is just an extreme value, plus everything else that they do.
Mark, back to the town garbage pickup.
Yes.
How many towns actually do that? Because the towns that I've lived in don't.
I think most towns actually have a townwide garbage district now. Not all of them, but more and more are going towards that.
They are?
Yeah, because, and why Salina originally did it back in the 80s is because there were so many trucks on the road, different days and times. Actually, it was not good for our roads either to have all those heavy trucks on there. So they consolidated the district and made it one district so that, you know, on a certain day, you know, your house was getting picked up. So it's worked. Like I said, and more towns are going to that.
And it would be even cheaper on this tax bill if it wasn't for prevailing wage. The state makes him charge the carrier prevailing wage. The carrier has to do prevailing wage. Where we don't, as a village, we have to do prevailing wage. And that's a good rate, but ours is a
Yeah,
little
that's a
lower.
good rate.
It would be even lower if the state would release the mandate.
So if we as a town had to pick up the garbage, it would be a lot more expensive. More difficult. You have to have a couple of those garbage trucks, which you have to keep and maintain. pretty regularly, plus people on top of that,
Yeah.
it would be challenging.
It's interesting that it appears as though the state mandated costs together with the.
Well, keep in mind, state mandating cost is basically your county tax line.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
we're
just the way they
assessing
presented it a few years back.
Just interesting.
Yes.
So it's 560.
I have two questions. First of all, like, does each town have to do its own human resources department and, you know? things
Basically,
like
I mean,
that?
we don't necessarily have a quote human resources department, but you have to be able to do some of that. Usually, at least in Salina, it's through the comptroller's office. And our comptroller's been around the block enough times that he's pretty educated in that. But I think some are.
I think we've seen some weakness in that.
Well, there's no question about that. I mean, that is one area in my job that I had to learn about, which I really still don't know enough about, that
Yeah.
makes it
I
difficult.
think it's gotten more and more complicated.
It has gotten more and more complicated, and I
I'll
think
bet you
sometimes.
Donna would have a few, comments on human resources in the difficulties.
Yeah, I think you've seen some people
So
try to
complying with
contract
the
that
laws
out
and
too.
stuff,
Right.
Just compliance,
Yeah.
nothing else.
labor law, civil service,
It's just huge.
auditing.
And then the second thing would be, can you talk a little bit about the relationship between the towns and the state? Like, for example, you said, all the highway signs have to be reflective. Did they fund that? Is there any?
And all that type of stuff, that just gets pressed down. This is what you gotta do, and you figure out how you're gonna pay for it.
And you get a lot of it, like in a lot of different areas.
Like
the
most,
way
I
you
think
do,
all
for
of it,
example-
right? Pretty much you would say all of it. If the
Pretty
state
much
comes up
all
with
of it.
something, we're gonna have to end up paying for it.
Well, how we do assessments, for example.
Yep. That's all, based on state, the way state mandates it, and then we just have to follow it. It can be hampered.
The towns operate under town municipal law, so all town law is actually state law, and it's dictated to the state, so they make changes to the state, and then there's local laws which aren't outlined there, which are unique to individual towns and within their powers to do so, but general municipal law, there's a subsection for town and village and county, and each of those dictates what the towns do. So when they make changes, go to each
One of,
school.
one of the things that probably a year or two after I came superintendent, that we worked out was that it was inefficient to have people coming to the district office to pay taxes, going to the town to pay taxes. We just set up accounts right at the bank. People go right to the bank, and we eliminated. We worked with the town so that they could eliminate the position. The person was at the end of their career, position got eliminated, saved the money. So, but those are some things school systems can set up right directly. So there is no, it just becomes seamless. Because you're right, Mark. There used to be the fact that well, if you collected it, you kept it for a few days, then you got the interest. But that's not even worth it anymore. You're not even getting. And it's people that have to handle all of that then. So it's just seamless, and the account just gets set up directly. And it's security-wise, in this day and age, just the fact,
I think that's tremendously convenient.
It's-
You mentioned that a lot of older people probably like the
Think of it
personal
with that
touch,
cash.
but
Right.
probably that population is shrinking and more people
Right.
want something that's,
Right, that's
Easier,
exactly it.
right?
But literally, the person who was also in their senior years was taking that cash and putting it in their drawer, and then they had to use the bank the next day, it was like, really?
Yeah.
But the other part of it too was that all the banks are handicap accessible, they're all, I think that once the population got used to the fact that it wasn't because we didn't want to see it and say hello to you and, but it was the fact that we could really more efficiently handle
sure.
your, this by a direct deposit.
Donna, did you set that up at the bank you have an account at? or-
I can get back to you on it.
Just curious.
I believe that it's either one of the banks we do business with or the two of them, but I know that we have the systems that are all set up, and I'll find out from Sheila. I want to say that it's at M&T, but I don't know, it could be a Chase, or it could be a both.
So they're
But
going to
it's-
M&T, any location?
Yeah, they're going to the banks that we do business with, and they're in convenient locations, and they're making that directly, but, yeah, we just removed all of that other, but again, 20 or 30 years ago, that wouldn't have been possible. Today, those kinds of accounts and systems it is possible.
Even the city property taxes are nailed.
Right. Right.
We're gonna have parking tickets.
I just,
Yes.
That's right.
But we can, I can research that for you.
Yeah, it's good.
Find out what that is.
I think that's
Seems like a
good.
logical.
Yeah. It just, it relates, it just takes out another layer of bureaucracy that you just don't need.
This is a very good perspective.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, I did too.
You know, you say state mandated costs. What would those be?
I'll defer to Travis.
That doesn't count the state mandated,
It's the,
prevailing wage and
no, Congress is,
trash collection and.
No, there's WIC's laws.
It's county property tax, but all of our property tax in the county is eaten up by state mandated costs like Medicaid.
Well,
and all
I made
those.
that point this
Yep.
morning. The reason that New York, I think, the reason New York state taxes are higher than any other state in the nation is because we're the only state in the nation where the county residents pay half the Medicaid bill.
So basically, that top line is just remitted to the county, right?
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
And then they remit it.
And they remit it to the state.
And they remit it to the federal government.
state plus some.
Plus.
Yeah, so that the tax levy that comes from the county doesn't cover the bill to the state. It covers like 80% of it. The rest is sales tax.
Thank you, that was great.
Okay. So I'm gonna do a little different. I'm gonna go kind of like in a day in life, week, month, year of a mayor. And I'm gonna use my Village of Fayetteville as an example. So most mayors' terms are either 2 years or 4 years. Most of us don't have term limits, and most of us aren't part of a political party when we run. When I ran 4 years ago, I ran under Fayetteville First. That was my name. I didn't run under a Republican or Democrat. We really don't get into the political subdivision at a village level. There's 4 trustees. Some villages have 6, but most have 4, and an elected judge. And most of our terms are 2 years and 4 years. So there's really 5 elected officials in the village. As Mark said, that the mayor is the CEO of the village operations. So everything goes across the mayor's desk. And that includes all the annual appointments for our boards, which is zoning, historic, planning, clerk, DPW superintendent, fire department officers, and all the trustee assignments. They have liaison appointments. That's all part of the mayor's responsibility to make those appointments on a yearly basis. We were talking earlier about the town DeWitt's looking at going to an appointed clerk versus a elected clerk. In the village, we don't have that problem because if the mayor's not happy with their clerk at the time, it's a 1-year appointment and they're not renewed. And there's no civil service laws, there's no protection. It's the clerk's done and a new clerk comes on. Most villages don't change clerks because you try to find that person that's going to help you and work with you and help move the bus forward. I'm also the chief financial officer, so the budget in New York state law, the mayor creates the budget and then presents it to the board of trustees. That budget, as it's presented to the trustees, is the budget until they make a motion or they vote to change it. If they don't make that change, it stays the way it is. They can go up, they can go down. You saw the city of Syracuse just go through a change with their budget. But the mayor presents that, prepares that, and presents that to the board of trustees. We have financial statements that are checked monthly and quarterly. We go through that to make sure that everything is done per accounting code and through the state. We also do staff meetings. Most mayors have quarterly staff meetings where they sit down with their department heads and they go through that. Another role of the mayor is project management. Mark knows as well, there's always things going on in villages. So there's nobody to do your job. I can't sit there and say, okay, go ahead, employee X, you go ahead and run this project. There's nobody to do that because most villages don't have a big staff. The Fayetteville budget is $5.2 million and there's a staff of 35. 13 fire, 13 DPW, 2 in the court, 4 trustees, myself, and 2 other employees. We're on a $5.2 million budget. People might say, well, that's a pretty good staff. That's really not a huge staff. I don't have someone I can just sit there and go to and say, okay, go do this. So the mayors mostly handle all the projects. And that could be sewer projects, that could be projects that happen in the village, say But right now, we're in the middle of an EFC grant that we got for a gateway project. So I'm the head of that, and I work with EFC, I work with my clerk, and I work with our engineering firm and prepare that. Anytime you have development coming in, they meet with the mayor. That's kind of the person that they meet with and say, okay, what do I need to do to get this project moving forward, or how does this fit into the character of what we're looking to do? So a lot of project management happens at the mayor's level. Let me step back. All mayors in Onondaga County are part-time. They're not full-time employees. And their salaries range from $1,500 a year to $18,000 a year. But no, on paper, no mayor is full-time employee. I had to, for civil service, go through, or for retirement, New York State retirement, go through and do my log for a 3-month period. It's on average about 30 hours a week. So it's not a job that you take for the money or the benefits. It's a job that you take because you love your community. It's not about the money. I've said that before, and I believe in all the mayors that that's truly what they do. So project management's a big thing. Emergency preparedness, Mark touched on it a little bit, but most villages have either a fire department or they have a fire district that they work with or are in charge of. But Mark's gone through it, the Fable's gone through it, East Syracuse has gone through it twice in the last 2 years of major storms hitting. That is our responsibility. We are responsible to make sure that the roads are cleared, that we have an emergency operation that's set up. And that's part of the mayor's duties. Travis, I think, was at our meeting when we did Kevin Wisely did a presentation on how to declare a state of emergency. It's the mayor's responsibility because we have home rule law. The town supervisor has that in his town, and then the county executive has it, and then the state has it. So the governor may declare a state of emergency in the state. That doesn't mean that it's in Fayetteville or Onondaga County. Then the county has to turn around and declare it, and then we have to sit there and say, okay, we have an emergency, and we declare it. But the mayor is in charge of making sure that everything is happening and functioning in the village for its residents, and that's a big thing that I know the county's worked on. We, and as mayors, take it very seriously, and we've taken a lot of training classes towards that. Another avenue that the mayor has to do is lobby with other municipalities, and we have to talk to other mayors, other town officials, county executive and legislatures, state legislatures and the executive branch, the federal level, Congress, Senate, and some of us have been fortunate enough to get to the White House and do some lobbying there. It takes a lot. We're not players, and mayors are usually not political figures, so it's very tough for us to get to some of these meetings and get to some of these things. We don't have a lot of political background, most of us are just regular citizens that wanted to help. And I tell this to a lot of people, we have very good relationships and we get a lot done. If I have a problem, I pick up the phone and I call Travis, or I call, Congressman Maffei, or I call Senator Shue. We pick up the phone and we make phone calls, and we've been very fortunate in the mayors that we get a lot done. We get a lot of cooperation. We're also involved in trade organization, NICOM, which is the New York Conference of Mayors. Is our big push, where we get a lot of resources from. We get a lot of help, and they are the ones that really, we meet 4 times a year, and there's training classes and there's things that are going on in the state that they help us through. Most villages have different organizations, but I'll give you what we are. In Fayetteville, we have a senior center, Chamber of Commerce, Recreation Committee, a library, Parks and Tree Commission, DPW services, fire and EMS, courts, codes, clerk. The DPW, fire, and court and codes are paid. Everything else is 100% volunteer. Most villages have volunteers that step up and do those planning boards, historic boards. I know in the town, some of them pay them $50 a year to be on the board. It's not a lot. We don't have to pay anybody any money. Most of the villages, people want to help. They want to be part of the village and they want to be part of the system. The mayor is in charge of executing all contracts. The mayor is the only person that can sign a contract on behalf of the village. Usually that's done through our council. Someone talked about, and I think Mr. Byrne talked about, outside services and what we use. Most villages have don't have an inside legal counsel, so they go out for legal counsel. We are fortunate, we use an HR service because we have gone through some problems and we have learned from our mistakes. So we have an outside HR employee relations company. Some villages have a village engineer, some go outside. We go outside and we use 4 or 5 different engineering firms. And BOCES. BOCES has been a tremendous resource for IT and now for fuel and our electric and gas in our buildings. So we have reached out to that avenue, and they've saved us countless thousands of dollars. And they have a lot of resources that we didn't have before we got.
Mark, does that mean you're able to piggyback on their contract?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They just signed
let
it.
me just put a context on that. That means that all the school systems in the county are actually advantaging because BOCES is the consortium of the school. So the school systems buy that fuel, the school systems buy that energy together. And because of that, we're able to get great pricing. I mean, we do that with purchasing, with fuel, with health benefits, and each district has to. But in other words, BOCES in and of itself can't do that. It's the districts that are in the 3-county area that are in those consortiums, and then that the towns or the villages can connect with that.
Which, most of them are starting to do that. Another big is communication. And communication in, I think Kathy always says, you can't go to the grocery store without someone. It's even gotten to the point where I can't go to church, and I get the turnaround saying, when are you paving my road? Peace be with you. It's amazing. But verbal, emails, website, newsletters, face-to-face, and letters. A typical day in my life is go in at 6:30, 7 o'clock. I usually have 1 or 2 meetings a day in the morning, and then I go back at night and finish up and do some other things. I'm married to my BlackBerry, as my wife says. Every website email that someone has a question comes to my phone, and then I can either forward it to a department head or answer it myself. But communication is the biggest thing that we've learned, is getting back to people. I've never been so impressed when someone, I call Senator Schumer and he actually calls me back. I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. I think that's what our residents look at. And when the mayor calls or the town supervisor calls, that means that we're listening.
And they're surprised by that sometimes.
I'm shocked that they're surprised by it, but that's our job. Constituent service, a lot of what we deal with is requests, questions, complaints. My biggest problem right now is neighbor versus neighbor. I don't know what it is with people. I don't know if we're just tired and we're cranky or hot, but right now it's neighbor versus neighbor. And we have tried to find this fine line of giving them the resources on both sides and saying, here, you really need to deal with it. But it's something that affects their quality of life. Everything we do is towards increasing their quality of life. Another thing is working, again, on economic development. Even though, and Travis, don't get mad, even though we lost sales tax, we still work on economic development. This morning alone, I met with a developer who's going to be turning a factory into a housing development. We know it's good. We know it's the right thing to do. We want to bring people into our factory. What's that?
I think I know that factory.
Yeah, you do. Yes, you do. We talk about a lot of villages have consolidated services. We beat the drum, but I just want to give you faithful. DPW superintendent, we share with the village of Manlius. Code enforcement, we share with the village of Manoa. Fire administrators, we share with the village of Manlius. Peace control, which we had a dog. We hired a dog. Or we didn't hire a dog. We bought a dog. And we do the schools. We do the schools. Maple Manlius schools in the village of Manlius. Town of Manlius Police Department. We consolidated our police department back in 1985. Salt brine. The state, Onondaga County, and the village of Manlius and Manoa all use our salt brine. For some reason, there's other municipalities, I won't mention them, that snow melts differently than it does in Fayetteville, and they don't do it. Dog control with the town of DeWitt, and our assessor's office. We don't. We've turned it over years and years ago to the town of Manlius, and they do all our assessments. Obstacles, I will be, Jim asked this question earlier. New York State pension is just a huge problem for all of us. Everybody in this room should be in arms about the New York pension. Every one of us pays. I would love to know what the pension bill is, but I know when I started 11 years ago, it was $64,000. Today it's $395,000. I have the same amount of employees. There's a problem. It could be fixed. No one wants to take care of it. If it was a mayor's job, it would be fixed. Or a town supervisor, it could be fixed. But it's not our job, and we can't fix it. The civil service, prevailing wage, Wicks Law 207A, unfunded services to other municipalities. We're finding, because we have services that other villages don't, as far as fire and EMS, we're going to areas and we're not getting paid for it. But they don't have the service, so we have to go. And that's part of New York State law. We have to go. We're the closest emergency service, but they don't have the money or the resources to fund it. We have that funding. So there's another unfunded mandate. And the mayor's really job is full-time, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. but it's a great job. It's not, I think every mayor that's in Onondaga County really enjoys what they do. You know, if you don't love it, I think if you took every one of their salaries away, they'd still do it. I really do, because it's, you know, it's about helping people, and that's our biggest job, is to help people and get things done for our villages. Do some of us struggle? Yes. Do some of us need help? Yes. But I think the majority of the mayors that are on top of their game and doing a good job have communities that reflect that. And you saw it in some of the information that was sent out. Yeah, some villages are having population decreases. Some are having increases. I think last time 12 of the 15 had either decreases or stayed the same. 3 of us moved up. Well, the ones that are on top of their game and the quality of life is helping and they're doing things that are progressive are moving forward. So maybe that's the thing that we need to work on better as mayors, is being a little more progressive and a little more working hard. And I'll leave you with one last story. When we talk about numbers, when we're talking about looking at all these numbers, Mark and I were talking earlier, and he was showing me his tax bill. So Mark's fire tax, and this is nothing against Mark's fire department, was $3.31. Fayetteville's is $2.04. And my people are beyond upset. Beyond upset. They think it's outrageous. They think it's the highest. They think because we have a Taj Mahal and you know, we have the nicest equipment, we have all this, it's outrageous. I look at that and Mark says, hey, we're very happy with that number. That's a great number. It's less than a cup of coffee a day. So we got to be very careful when we look at numbers, because, you know, Lynn Court, that's a valuable service and it's all volunteer and they do what they do. In Fayetteville, you know, I say, wow, we're doing pretty good. It's only $2.04 or $2.40, whatever it is. So we got to be careful when we look at numbers, because numbers always aren't the answer. It's what goes into those numbers. And I hope I gave you the life of the day.
How do the towns, how do the villages and towns, the villages within the towns and those towns, how do they relate to each other? Is there any formal relationship?
There is. You know, we try to do a lot, and everything that we do is towards what best serves the residents and what provides the best service. So, like in code enforcement, we said, geez, let's go to the town. They've got it. And the town kind of looks at some things and building and zoning differently than a village. In a village, it's about your neighbor, it's about quality of life, and it's about, you know, taking care of problems. And in the town, it's development. And sometimes they lose focus on the quality of life. And we saw our slip. So we decided to take it back. And at the same time, the village of Manoa was having problems, so we kind of said, hey, let's do it together. So we hired they hired the code enforcement officer. We have an agreement with them, and then we pay for the car and the phone and then a portion of the salary. It works out very well. We both get what we need out of that. But the towns, in general, yeah, we have a very good working relationship. I can tell you when there's an emergency, like our emergency operations center, the last storm, we got very nervous because it was coming over us. And we set up the emergency operations center. There was a police officer there from the town. There was a town official in the room. It spun up, and it didn't happen. And then we sent all our crews to East Syracuse to help East Syracuse. No questions asked, no bill, nothing. They go, and they help. And they had to come back, and then they went 2 days later and helped. But that's what villages are about. I've been in Montville, we've been in Skaneateles, we've been in East Syracuse, we've been in North Syracuse. Our garbage truck was in Fulton when that garage collapsed. Yeah. We called them up the next day and said, we've got an extra one, come get ours. And they went and got it, and came and got it. Villages do that very informally. There's not a lot of formal contracts or memos of understanding in villages, because when we need something, we usually need it very quickly, or they need it very quickly. And we have the school districts, you know, they have the greatest mowing equipment imaginable. And when we need something in our park, we just go ask them and we pick it up. You know, when we have festivals, they have all the bleachers. We borrow their bleachers. There's no, you know, agreements. It's just come get them, and if you break them, fix them. If you know, we have the motto, when we take it, we bring it back better than we got it. So most villages are like that.
Yeah, I mean, and just to give you an example, you know, depending on for some of the tinier school districts, they probably reside within one village and within one town. When you get to a large geographic school district like ESM 72 square miles, we're actually in 4 towns and 2 villages. So
Yeah.
Mayor, that's right. Yeah, but all the things that Mark talked about are really true of each of those entities that both Marks talked about. You know, and they have a little bit of difference sometimes in styles or in priorities, but they all really work for the quality of life of the residents. They really do.
Excellent.
Thanks for
I
your
thought
work.
both of those presentations were really good.
Yes,
Thank you.
great, thanks.
Any other questions? We have a lot of ground to cover. If anybody has any questions, these two guys, otherwise we'll let them off the hook. Any questions?
Not a question, but there's one comment about the pension, which I think is an important one. Because for those of us who have been in public roles for a good number of years, back in, I want to say, late 80s or early 90s, every public employee used to contribute to their pension, and now they do again with Tier 5 and Tier 6 to some extent. But there came a moment in time when New York State, those coffers were so plentiful that they convinced the powers that be that there wasn't any need for anyone to contribute any longer. We all inherited school districts, towns, villages, city, and all of the residents now that pay taxes, the results of that one decision that was made back then. And it has been, when you see those charts that go up, if you take the pension chart, you will see that that's probably the biggest driver, along with health benefits, that has driven that chart up the scale. And we have no control over it. It's amortized over 5 years. We've said, and the good part is, it's probably one of the best funded pension systems in the country. So in that sense, where it's written about in magazines and all over the place. On the other hand, it's amortized over 5 years. We would say, why not amortize over 10 years? Why can't the people who are controlling that pot of money think about differently how, and then we do now have Tier 5 and Tier 6, but by the time those employees actually grow into the system, you know, the Tiers 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, you know, Tiers 3s and 4s used to pay into their pension. So, yeah, so the ones and 2s, it doesn't happen
Everybody
any
but
longer.
ADA did. So 1 through 4 were contributors.
Right.
It was scaled, you know, 1 was less than 4.
Right.
But ADA was the only system that was non-contributory.
So it's huge with regard to how the state could play a hand in some of the costs that we have no control over.
And police and fire pay nothing,
Right.
and they retire after 20 with 50% of their salary.
Right.
If they get hurt in the line of duty and they can't work, they get their full salary. Plus you have to pay to replace their, so you have their salary plus the replacement salary. And civil service has a little bit, I have an employee who went out, broke his arm, he was out 6 weeks, he gained 65 pounds. So we had to have him a fitness for duty requirement, came back and he failed. I still have to pay for civil service law. But he can't work, I have to pay him for the civil service. It's just, the system's
There's no
broken.
reason why it can't be a defined contribution program.
It could
Oh, it is now.
It is,
It
again.
is.
Because again, with
Right.
Tier 6, but it's
Yeah,
taken a
Tier
lot
6.
to get to that.
Yeah.
Because naturally, once that was taken away, every employee bargaining unit in the entire state wanted it to stay that way. And they're not seeing, I think they are now more so, they're not seeing the fact that that's just not sustainable. It's just not sustainable that no one's contributing, but everyone's benefiting, you know, all the way into retirement. So it is now with Tier 6, and I think it needs to continue to be such. I mean, my question of the senators was, well, if at some point the state made that law, why can't they just reverse that law? And they say they can't, which is interesting.
It's
They
just
can't.
politics.
They can't, they don't want it.
It's just politics.
I mean, the pension system is.
Hold on, Steve's got it. Steve?
Oh, sorry, Steve.
No, I was just gonna say, I think the challenge is, you know, while it's hard to make that shift, to go back, it would be nice if we could do it sooner, because, you know, you go to cities like Detroit, and you see a fire drill going on, because the hole is just getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and there's no way out of it. So at some level, someone is going to have to pay. People are going to have to fund a pension to a larger degree than they are now. And I just wish leadership could step forward and address it. I sometimes think the public would respond better than they think if we all knew the truth.
Yeah, Steve, I think it's called a big dose of political courage.
Absolutely.
what's amazing is it's not, it wouldn't be that difficult because it's fully, Donna said, it's fully funded. So if everybody retired today,
Right.
everybody that's in the system has a pension, and it's fully funded. So you retire everybody from the system, and you say, okay, I'm 47, I retired in 20 years, okay? It's frozen, and in 20 years I can get my pension, and the money's there. If I want a 401k, then I start a 401k, and it's much cheaper, and it's much more beneficial for the employee. I don't understand what the political courage is. It's easy. I mean, corporations have done it. Somebody from GE told me about it happened to them. You know, it happened to me at Compass Group. It happens. And it's the way to do it, but they have not figured out a way.
And the other thing for them to look at, you know, is to be creative about it, is to look at things like absorbing a portion of the bill. To your point, your first bill 10 years ago was $65,000, it's now $400,000.
Right.
Okay, well, if your bill's $300,000 next year, you're doing much better.
Yeah.
You are doing
They
much better.
They say it's coming down a little bit.
And nobody had to really vote to do something really publicly big.
Right.
So there's got to be, I mean, there are, we all know they exist, more creative financial ways to solve, especially the trickle down from the state to town to county to city to village.
This discussion's.
We're not gonna solve that.
No,
We can just go to.
we should know.
Well, we can make a recommendation. Melody's gonna give us a report on public engagement.
Okay, I will try to possess the Mark twins are certainly a hard act to follow, but I think both presentations really help set the structure for public engagement. Just the information that we learned here today and certainly included in your packets. We have a docket. And this is the information that the public engagement team put together, which includes lots of the same information that both Mark and Mark covered. So a big part of public engagement and how we framed it was really about having to provide all of the consensus board members the information so that in effect, everyone is singing from the same hymnal and you are understanding what the collective information is. So what I would really encourage you to do, and I won't go through it today, is to spend some time with this document because you will get very comfortable after you do. Murph and Kev, everyone's taken a lot of time to really, and Lori have taken time to put this together so that it becomes very easy, very manageable to understand. We're going to take another crack at it as well to put it in even more layman's terms, but this is a good docket for you to begin with. If you have feedback that you want to provide us, please do so because I believe Kathy Richardson is going to take this and get it bound for us so it becomes a piece of information that we can provide, or it becomes something that you walk with as a tool and a guide. We gave you good information, specific facts. We gave you the elevator speech. We gave you some visual information, so you can put all of this into context. But I think the most important part for all of us from a consensus perspective is certainly we need to be authentic in how we talk about this. I think we are all on this board for various reasons, but it's all tying back to the same objective that we care deeply about the place where we live, work, and play. And we want it to be the best that it can be. So I think knowing and understanding from that framework, there's a certain level of commitment and compassion from the folks around this table. So certainly share that. Share that with your constituencies. Share that with your friends and your family. I think Sharon Owens at our last public engagement meeting talked about how she uses her family as a sounding board to say, does this make sense? Do you understand what it is that I'm engaged in? We
I can get them to listen, I can get in.
So we encourage you, use your families, use whomever you need to even do a sound check, if you will. with them about consensus, but we wanted to provide, one of our deliverables was to provide you this information. And the other part that's included in the data is also where are we from a process perspective, because, you know, I call this our silent phase, if you will. This is our silent fundraising phase. But we're out and we are engaging with entities, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But this is our silent phase. Once we really engage with our consultants, and we do it far more aggressively, then I think the groundswell of public engagement will really kick off in a much larger way. So there are 5 things I have a call to action for us as a board, for us to think about. 5 things for us to do. They should all be fairly simple. 1, spread the word about what it is that we're doing. All right, we got to dispel any myths that our sole objective is to slash and burn government. All right, dispel myths. Talk about what it is we're doing. Drive folks to our website so that we can encourage them to sign up and get regular information so that we can keep the flow of information consistent and regular, but please drive them to the website. The other piece, identify speaking opportunities. If there are neighborhood groups, if there are groups of your associations, and I believe there was one today with the Home Builders Association. If there are groups, entities, please identify them for us. And certainly if you feel comfortable, sign up to deliver these messages. Provide feedback on this material, because the only way that we can be better and get better is to hear from all of you. Does it make sense? Is it hitting the mark? Are we saying what we need to say to the public? And then the last thing, and this is something I believe Murph and Laurie sent out earlier in the week, but we need your bios and we need your photographs. And why do we need that? And we need your personal statement. Why do we need that? Because I think it lends credibility, right? It lends credibility to the people that are connected to this. Folks want to understand, why are we each personally connected to this effort? So that's my 5 basic calls to action. I believe I might have hit everything. A website update, we're still working. Lots of good things have occurred, so please take a visit. Travis and Kevin have been working really hard. We're also going to really engage in a far more significant social media campaign. We are outreaching and working with the consultants to do that, to really frame out something that's workable. And if there are any, committee, did I forget anything? Did I? All right. No. So that's my report. Gave you your 5 calls to action. Our next public engagement meeting is on August 7th, and we welcome any guests.
No, you're doing a great job.
She is.
She is.
You're accomplishing.
You got a nice shout out at the Home Builders.
You did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very nice.
good.
Awesome.
Good. No, you don't have to.
No, last time they did that, I guess.
So Neil, I guess you're up.
We have a report from CGR, a brief report
What
here
is
that
he
we're passing
complaining about
around. And let me just kind of walk through the highlights of where CGR is, what they've done.
Numbers, right?
No numbers yet.
No. I was on another.
Oh, okay. But where CGR now, they've actually obtained all the data on, and analyzed the 213 expenditures and revenue data, and that was acquired from the Office of State Comptroller. And then so they have that information for all governmental units in our county. And they're in the process of putting together 2 critical components that will go into the baseline report. One is called the super grid, which is kind of a standardized comparison of these costs to deliver the services, and then a functional spending map. And the spending map serves basically a starting point to identify areas of common spending and service involved. So it's a way of cross-referencing the services that are provided. And Joe will be here for our next meeting, and he'll go through the preliminary analysis of that data with us, but he couldn't make it here today. Joe has been with us in some of the meetings. He was with us on June 17th, which was a combined meeting. Mark and Mark were there, of the Town Supervisors Association and Village Mayors Association. And we have meetings coming up next week that Joe will be attending, all of those meetings. Two important ones, I think, are a meeting with the mayor and a meeting with the county executive. The meeting with the mayor is on July 29th. The meeting with the county executive is on the 31st. But also, beginning next week, Joe starts meeting with the officials in towns and villages, that process. Because remember, he said they just weren't going to rely on the comptroller's information, but rather they were going to dig deeper, they're going to dive deeper. And so these meetings are beginning to be set up so that they have, and they can hear directly from the local officials that can start numbers, can qualify numbers, can begin the value proposition of certain services that are provided. So we feel really good that Joe is deeply involved and his staff is involved, and he's going to be more deeply involved next week. So that's kind of a brief update. Questions?
Does anybody have any doubt about the quality of the data we'll get from the state controller's office? Because
It might be dated, I think, right?
Yeah.
Well, but and we had that meeting, and that's why we said we wanted them to meet with each mayor and meet with the town supervisor, just to let them look at the numbers and say, okay, no, that's not right, or yes, that's right, or gee, no, that's included our fund balance, or, you know, there's a lot of things that go into that control.
Some of the things even that we talked about here as an example had a little bit additional elaboration, what's included, what isn't included.
Okay, so that's accounted for.
Yes, yes, so that they'll know that the numbers that they gave are correct.
Right.
They have to buy in them because they have part of the process
Absolutely.
to review those numbers and to make input.
And that was a commitment to the town supervisors and mayors that they were going to be those personal meetings. We weren't just going to take the controller's data and just take it on face value.
So those are the fundamental rule of data, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
So it's okay, great. Anything else? Any other questions on that?
Yeah, one question. So CGR has captured all the data for the towns and villages. What about the city and the
all
county?
units ago.
All of them?
Yeah.
So they've got the city and the county governments as well?
Everything from all of the units of government in our county.
Okay.
All the data with the state control.
All reporting local government.
So the same process that's gonna check and balance the data from the towns and villages, is that gonna happen on the city level, or are they trusting that that's accurate?
It's going to happen on city and county
City and
level.
county too.
And that begins with the meetings with the county executive next week and with the mayor next week.
Anything else on that? I should have mentioned at the outset that Catherine wasn't feeling well today, so she didn't make it. But she's been very active and very busy, and she's doing her good lawyerly work for us, so it's great. So the next item we have is board committees. And we talked about this a little bit, and it's the way most legislatures work. You divide the labor and appoint committees, and ideally you find people who are interested in those committees to work on them, and they become the experts, they become the resource. And I can't tell you how many times I would walk into the floor of the House, not sure exactly what the bill we were voting on was, and looking to find somebody that I knew that issue to see how they voted. And you know, I can make that admission now that I'm out of public comment. But it's true. And that's the way legislatures work. They look to experts, people who have dug in and drilled down in those issues. So we think it's probably a pretty good idea to do it with our commission too. And so the staff, our great staff, put together some ideas on how to whack these these committees up, and so I'm going to read through the list, and we welcome your thoughts on that structure, and also your level of interest in these committees. And staff informs me that if we don't volunteer, we will be appointed. So here's what they suggest. The following subcommittees of the consensus were proposed: public safety, which is mainly police and fire; municipal operations, which is a fairly broad term, but it's separated into courts, assessor, clerk duties, and back office. Third subcommittee, or committee rather, is governance. Inter-municipal agreements, regional approaches, less service specific. And again, these are just ideas. They don't have to be structured this way. Public engagement, well represented here
Is that a whackable one? No.
DPW, now, that suggested DPW and parks. It could be DPW, it could be parks, and a separate committee on parks. And then economic development, which is, the idea with DPW and parks, the common thread there is labor intensive, frontline service delivery. And the last, economic development, is planning and land use. So just generally comments on those topics for committees and any others that we left out, or?
It's a lot of committees for the number of people we have, isn't it, really? I mean, some committees, you might have 3 people.
Yeah, that would be six. That would be 6 committees. So I think we'd entertain the idea of consolidating some of those.
I think the idea behind it is we really want to have 2 or 3 people that together with our consultant will dig into these areas. And so when it gets to a public meeting, there's a question about something, we've got several members of the commission that have really familiarized themselves with some of the information.
Do these committees align with the way CGR has organized its work?
Generally, yes.
It is, that's the way they've done it.
And as Jim said, there's been some discussion, should parks be associated with municipal operations, or it should be associated with DPW? So there's some fine tuning of some of this that probably is required.
Did I hear where you put health services?
It's not in there because, well, it's not in there, but towns and villages don't provide them.
Mostly county. But it's mostly a county service, right?
City doesn't provide it.
City.
I would suggest parks isn't actually all that terribly labor intensive. There aren't a lot of full-time employees. There's parts of summer labor that's pretty cheap, but most of the municipalities only have like a director, and then they'll ramp up in the summer and hire some, generally high school, college age people, lifeguards, things of that nature, depending on what services they deliver. Sometimes there's experts, like people who are trainers, like in yoga and whatnot, and they do different municipalities, and they just pay them on an hourly. Am I wrong about that, Mark? Or
What's it?
I
No.
was gonna say the pools or that. I agree, we don't hire.
You don't have
We
a
have
lot of
summer
parks.
help, but they do everything. Parks,
But you
garbage.
generally have you have a Parks and Rec director
No.
who or you don't even have that, yeah. So it's a lot of.
We got about maybe 4
Yeah, some municipalities have a
employees
lot.
that are there all year.
Whereas your DPW is encompassing, your highway department, trash pickup in many villages, brush, sewer in villages especially, outside of the sewer district.
But I think that the heavy lift for parks might not be the people, but might be the equipment and service.
Or the service, yeah.
The service levels are the things that, are kind of interesting with parks because they seem to vary so much by municipality. I don't know whether that, meanwhile, at least intuitively, you think the DPW as being a fairly consistent, type of service across municipalities. I don't know if that makes any difference in terms of thinking about the pairing, and I don't know what your reaction, gentlemen, is to the idea of pairing those two, or whether it should be municipal office.
I think parks should go to municipal
I
office.
would agree.
Because everybody's different. but all of us have DPWs over 2.
I mean, a lot of the things that qualify as recreation are like senior trips to Yankee games on a bus. It's out there outsourced.
Seniors aren't really even in this, and
Yeah,
some
they're
towns
senior
are very
services.
extensive in their senior
But a
service.
lot of that falls under the
It's
parks.
under parks, right.
Right,
More
right,
north, yeah.
but that would be people you'd have to organize those things, right?
A lot of times you just provide the facility.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, they just
And
maintain
their
their
own
own
internal
internal
groups have
process.
their own
Okay.
hierarchy that, that facilitates them.
So it's gonna go with municipal operations?
Yep.
I think that's smart. DPW is where the money is, outside of public
It's
safety.
public safety, yeah.
But there's a lot in DPW. There's a lot to be done there.
Do we have any volunteers yet?
All right.
It's
Good
your
question.
volunteer.
Volunteers, I'm writing.
Sure.
Can
I'll
I
look
see?
at public safety.
Thank you, Mark.
Hey, could the other Mark maybe look at municipal operations?
Yes, that'd be fine.
I think that'd be a great thing.
I don't know if it's a conflict or an advantage. I'm the chair of the Onondaga County Industrial Development Agency, so I don't know. I know what I do. I won't comment
Could you
on
get
whether
caught
it's a
there or
blessing
not?
I don't know if it's, I mean, I naturally have a background in planning and land use because that's, I happen to be the chair.
Sounds like we have volunteer.
We do.
Murph, I'd be glad to do either or both of public safety and DPW.
Great.
I think it'd be
Anybody else
helpful to get
Feel passionate?
business people on some of these,
Yeah.
you know, like,
We have Steve
you know,
in a
Bill,
meeting.
you're there, but I mean,
Bill,
to
yeah.
get involved in the
Great.
fire department or DPW or something like that, because
I agree.
Steve, I know Steve, I know he's gonna shake his head and go, what? But if he's in the committee and he's sitting there and listening to what we have to do and why we have to do it and how we have to do it,
Right.
okay, now it makes sense.
I absolutely agree with those two areas to have a business
I agree.
input, business perspective on that would be really
Yes.
good.
Sorry, Steve.
Bill, do you have any particular one that?
Yeah, put me on DPW.
Right.
We run lots of trucks.
There you go. You run a fleet. I forgot about that. Great. Is Steve still with us? Steve, are you there?
I'm here.
Do you have a particular area of interest?
The only one that, well, I think there are a couple areas, but one that popped to my mind as you were going through the list was governance.
Okay, great.
Could you say a bit about what the time commitment is? Because there's more than one that I'm interested in, but I don't want to be unrealistic.
So I can't speak exactly because we haven't done it yet, but I think that a lot of it is getting smart during this so-called quiet period about the issue, the actual issue, whether it's trash or garbage or whatever. And that the bulk of the actual work won't occur until the reports are out for the option spaces. You know, I mean, nothing will go out for public consideration until it's been vetted by this group, 19-member group. So there may be, you know, more meetings right here amongst just all of you or a smaller group of you to say, let's look at the options, let's drill down. But nothing, and then of course the next step would be the public meetings. And it would be, I think we'd also take the task force or committee leads on like how many public meetings do you think would be appropriate for trash, for governance, for et cetera. And some may require more than others, obviously. But just tell me what you're interested in, Andy.
Yeah, I'm already on public engagement, and I'd like to continue that, but also governance, DPW, and economic development.
Okay, great. Who did I miss? B?
I'm interested in public engagement to continue there.
Yeah, great.
I'm also interested in governance and economic development. And after March, I'll have much more free time.
Okay. Sharon, do you have a particular?
Public engagement, I think I'd like to go with economic development, planning matters.
Okay. Do we miss anybody?
Well, you got some people that aren't here.
Right,
and what's
right.
new.
So we'll call them.
They'll be volunteers.
They'll be volunteers, right? Or if we have gaps, they'll be assigned. And we got it. No, you got enough in play? Yeah.
I think what we, are just talking, maybe we could be ex officio on
On
all of them.
everything, yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we could, as needed or as interested,
Exactly.
take turns.
Maybe
Exactly.
rotate, so we get a little bit of.
So everybody gets a little bit of
Yeah.
education on all of it, yeah. And we will do, our very, very best, obviously, to help accommodate you all by phone, by Skype, by web, by email, whatever, so that you can meet easily amongst yourselves, et cetera. And I'm sure Lori, myself, Kevin, Travis, we're gonna do everything we can to be at all of them too, so that there's a continuation thread amongst the group. Sound good?
Any other suggestions on the committee structure itself? Or are we satisfied with that makeup? Sounds like we are. Sure.
We also think that we should, as a group, have satellite operating principles. And we don't really have a draft yet, but we have acquired basically the operating principles that are used in the situation with the city of Princeton and Princeton County. And so I think at the next meeting, we'll take that kind of framework and maybe kind of flush out a draft that would work for us, and then get your input on that at the next meeting. I think it's kind of would be important, particularly those maybe outside of us, who said, what are your guidelines? How do you work? That kind of thing. And so I think several people here and some others have suggested having some of those operating. Or if anything else on that?
No, I think that's great. Kathy Richardson is actually really doing some research on, between Robert's Rules of Order and other similar organizations. What should we be paying attention to?
I think we have a formality to approve the minutes of the previous commission meetings, so I would move that. It's the June 3rd meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Let's see, under the order, just comments, how are we doing? What are you hearing?
I don't know if this is, it's a little off the wall, but, it's really funny to state, I was down in New York City last week, and man, it's food times down there, it's unbelievable. Hundreds, thousands of tourists. You look at the competing interests across the state, you look at, agriculture, we're $6 billion, it's a big deal, things are good in the country, that really, which they are, okay? Agriculture's holding up in the state. Tourism downstate is $30 billion, you know what I mean? If you were Albany, where would you be focused,
Everybody in Albany.
I just think there's a lot of issues across the state. There's a lot of things that are going well, and I sympathize with the difficulty of, the people who are trying to run this state and how difficult it is, and how there's so many competing interests and so many things that need work, and yet New York City, try getting around in the car, it's just unbelievable traffic. There's so many issues, and so it's such a big and complex world that we're living in, maybe it's good that we're focusing at this level. This is really, that maybe this is really the right answer to do it at this level, but this is a big ballpark. It really is. And it's, I think what we do is important. As I said, that was kind of off the wall.
No, that's what we need to hear.
The pension conversation, brought up, and I think someone threw it out at the end about maybe, this group can make a recommendation. But I'm hoping that at the end of this process, not only have we created a roadmap for efficiency for our community, but become empowered as a community through this process to make some points to the state, and in a documented policy, bring on allies from other Western New York, the Finger Lakes, you know, the Binghamton area, that can consolidate around some of these issues we find, for a consolidated message across municipalities and regions to New York State. Pension being one of
I
them.
think that's superb.
Yeah,
The one thing
because I think we
that
have to
promise-
underscore the fact that all of the efficiencies we could create within 5 years could be sucked right away from us at a state level by that same move that was made with the pension. So then what would our communities be saying? They're still in the same boat. I mean, that's the truth of that matter.
But
Is that,
if we're really able to do this process to establish through data-driven process a groundswell of issues, you know, maybe people can ignore Central New York, but could you ignore Central New York, the Finger Lakes, Western New York, downstate, the Southern Tier, about the same issues?
You know,
Maybe
Sharon,
that's what.
Sharon,
Yes.
we've spoken, Village Mayors Association and Township Board Association, that the problems that they saw dealing with the state, we need to document those, and those will be part of this report. So to be part of that process of trying to affect some change. The good thing about this is that they're, from the opportunity for us to make a difference in that area, is the governor's paying attention to Central New York because of the pathways Central New York is on. So I think because of that, the statement of those issues and the impact of those issues on local government within Central New York will get some attention. If we articulate it and give all the reasons that you said, the analytical basis. Yeah.
To that end, there's a Upstate Latino Summit happening here in early October. It's a great opportunity for me to get this concept on that agenda, right? And that is a community of leaders from Buffalo to Amsterdam. So I'm excited about the opportunity to be able to do that. And if we get 3 people in the room, great, and if we get 20, even better.
It'll be great to hear what their reaction is
Right.
to it. You know, what other people think about what they're doing in Onondaga County.
I'd like to just point out that the meeting's location is not just an opportunity for us to see this nicely renovated library, but this is a part of a consolidated library district that goes countywide, has universal card access for people to be able to access public libraries. And in addition, this branch in particular is truly a community branch. So it's an idea that you can have a consolidated system and still have a localized impact. So I think it's a very good thing for us to kind of expand our mind as far as when you're thinking about different structures and how you restructure things and how we deliver services a little differently. Some time ago, we decided to make a change and it's worked out very well.
Excellent.
great.
It's beautiful.
There's
Looks
probably
great,
some
guys.
skepticism initially, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's a lot.
Anyone else?
Steve, thank you for hanging in with us.
Glad to do it.
All right.
Be there first.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you all very much. Meeting adjourned.